Welcome to Taking the Higher Road, a podcast by DriverReach in partnership with FreightWaves. I'm your host, Jeremy Reymer, founder of DriverReach, a modern software solution at the intersection of recruiting and compliance. With over 20 years in the trucking industry, both on the carrier side and the vendor side, I bring a wealth of experience around all things recruiting, retention, and compliance. On this show, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insights to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's most significant challenges, from recruitment and retention to the realm of regulatory compliance. Your positive feedback keeps us motivated, so remember to rate and review Taking the Higher Road on whatever platform you use to listen. This week, I'm honored to have one of my best friends in the industry, someone I've spent a majority of my trucking career working side by side with, Gary Langston, president of the Indiana Motor Truck Association. I'm so excited to finally have you on the show, Gary. Thank you for joining us.
It's good to see you, Jeremy. I always enjoy talking with you.
Yes. Well, prior to taking the helm at the IMTA back in 2011?
2010, prior to 2011, yes.
Yeah. You worked for 37 years at a small outfit known as UPS.
Correct.
Where you began your career as a driver before moving to operations and other leadership positions, including your final role as corporate public affairs manager. Now, I'm hoping we can unpack how you got into the industry, what kept you here, and the impact of the deep relationships that you've built over the years. You and I were fellow IMTA board members when we first met somewhere around 15 years ago and have been great friends ever since. We also remain fellow wordsmiths. I think
That's
we both
correct.
Yes.
One of my favorite things.
That's right. And I'd love to hear from you how important it is for companies to get involved with their state trucking associations. I think you and I know firsthand the value they bring to the industry, but ATRI's recent report further highlights the criticality of membership and participation. So perhaps you can also share a lot of the work that you're doing as the voice of trucking before the state legislature and Indiana's congressional delegation. And then lastly, we'll ask a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does all that work for you?
All works for me. I look forward to it.
So now before we dive in, I usually ask my guests if there's any particular books they've read that was impactful. But since you've got an annual conference coming up, one of the main speakers is Clint Pulver, the author of I Love It Here, How Great Leaders Create Organizations Their People Never Want to Leave. And I'm excited about that. DriverReach is the sponsor of that presentation. And I read the book last year in anticipation of hearing him speak last year. And unfortunately, we had a hurricane and that kind of set things back. But we're here. And so I'm excited about that. So if you haven't read that book yet, this is for the audience. I Love It Here. It's something that I found was really impactful, and obviously how important culture is. It's all about people. So I would ask you, maybe the best way to start things off, Gary, would just be if you could share with our listeners a bit more about your journey, how you found your way into the world of trucking, and eventually leading the IMTA.
It seems like every job I've had since I had a job had something to do with picking up something and taking it someplace different from where it started. In high school, as soon as I got my license, I was delivering propane gas to factories and residences, and I was delivering anhydrous ammonia to the farmers in the rural area that I lived in. So that was my first encounter. And then, as you mentioned, I ended up at UPS in my junior year of going to school at Indiana University, all by mistake. I had no intention of going there. It happened to be the case that my roommate had applied for a job in February that I didn't even know about. It was summer. I was going to summer school. He was off to work in the steel mills, and the phone rings asking him to come to work at UPS. And I said, well, he's gone, but I could use a job. And they said, can you be here by 4:00? And I said, yes, I can. And I was there for 37 years. So didn't start as a driver, started loading trailers and washing trucks and sweeping floors and all the things that you do as a part-time employee while you're in school. But after graduating, the UPS journey was much more, first of all, much more lucrative than what I was able to do with my public affairs degree when that happened. So it fit for me well. I was raised in a very strict environment, and UPS is a very strict environment, and it fit me well. And I was so happy to be there and enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, once you retired, I guess technically, but you didn't retire because then you you became the president of the Indiana Motor Truck Association that you were very involved with prior, and as well as many other state and national associations. But now you've been doing that for 12 plus years.
Correct. I can't believe it when you say that I have been doing it for 12 years and had no intentions once again. I lived in Chicago at the time when I retired, planned to come back here and not work, and just spend time with my kids who were young at the time. And it just so happened I talked to the guy who was running this place after a board meeting, and he's like, "Hey, I'm leaving. You should consider taking this job." And I really focused on trying to work for the governor for a couple of years in his last term. And Kenny, the guy that ran this, said, you don't want to do that. You need to take something that lasts for a while. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want it to last for a while, but anyway, it's been a blessing. I'll tell you, working at UPS, you think you knew everything that you needed to know about the industry, but it really wasn't until I left there and was able to see colors other than brown. I was able to see purple and yellow and green and all the other colors that are important in the industry that had much different business plans. And really, a lot of my trucking education has happened in the last 12 years.
Well, can you share now, as the president of the IMTA for 12 years, can you share what are your sort of key responsibilities and what goals do you have as president?
Well, we have the association. We have a relatively small staff, so everyone has a lot of different charges that they take care of. I oversee all of those. My particular focus is advocacy, public affairs. I spend most of my time focused on either legislative issues or regulatory issues, both at the state and federal levels. But our association is so important because it really focuses on safety, which is the primary goal of all state trucking associations, is to find ways to help our members become more safe and promote those, teach those, offer those. So those are the primary responsibilities that we have, and it's not really complicated. It's just ongoing. It never ends. You never get where you want to be. There's always room for improvement, so there's always plenty of work to do.
Well, you talk about advocacy, and it's not just being the voice for trucking in favor of certain things, but sometimes it's to protect the industry against things that are being, considered.
That's true. Fortunately, in Indiana, most of the things that we work on are in favor of, but there are things that come up that we don't support and have not supported. And quite frankly, I actually find those to be more interesting and challenging than trying to get the good stuff passed. Because when we oppose something, it attracts a lot of attention. And I really enjoy that part of it. But, speed limit increases and tax increases, tolling, those kinds of things that our industry generally doesn't support, eventually come up, and we have to take those on.
And you also mentioned safety, and I think that's a good point. And in an ATRI recent report, referenced the fact that members of state and national trucking associations are considerably safer than those who either were former members or never a member. And I think that was it's obviously chock full of good information, but I think that's a really good, compelling point on the importance and the value when safety and compliance is so foundational to this industry.
I'm so proud of that report. I won't brag or take all the credit for it, but a few years ago, I contacted Rebecca from ATRI, which I can't say enough good things about her or the work that her group does, and said, how about if we do that kind of study that just came out? And she said, well, I'll run it before the RAC and see what we can get done. So I don't know how many years ago it's been, but it never got adopted. And so I was so pleased when I heard this year that they were going to take it on, because I was of the opinion, as the study shows and as the results show, that members of trucking associations are going to be more safe. And I thought, well, even if they aren't, even if the results don't show that, it should tell anyone who runs a trucking association that maybe they need to refocus on the things that they're doing and change what they offer and to be helpful to their members, particularly if they're not more safe. But as it turned out, they are. And as you said, it's so important. That study, I think, is so important, not only to show the value of what we do, but to, as far as the growing membership and helping carriers understand that we can really offer something that will make them more safe and hopefully more economically valuable company as well.
Well, I think the question I have next, and I think we've kind of answered it already, but what are some of the key benefits that trucking companies, as well as industry suppliers, gain from being members? And maybe we can talk about the IMTA in particular, being that we're in central Indiana. That's, where we both are. And the opportunity, I think, obviously safety and advocacy, but also the networking, the relationships that are built in these groups, I think are second to none.
I think that's equally as important. The work that we do through workshops and seminars and conventions and all the things that we do, I think the networking piece that occurs when our members get together, as competitive as they are on the street, when they're away from those events, they're all vying for, in many cases, much the same freight, and they're as competitive can be. But when they're together, and they're talking about what worked, what didn't, what was good for them, what wasn't, things that people might try that they haven't tried. It's I don't know of any industry that is possesses a stronger family atmosphere from that perspective than the trucking industry.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And you've always been one who recognizes the value of investing in the future. And I think, DriverReach is the sponsor of ATA's Lead ATA program. But before there was Lead ATA, you shepherded Indiana Motor Truck Association's Future Leaders of Indiana, or FLY. And as a member of FLY's founding alumni, I'm I'm curious how important it is to you that we continue to invest in the industry's future leaders.
I don't think there's anything that we do that's more important than that. I mean, if you were to look at the board of directors and the general membership 12 years ago compared to now, it's just so amazing that the difference and the youth that is now here that wasn't there were young people then, but the ratio now, all the baby boomers they're going to places and relaxing and expecting these people to take over. And I work hard every day trying to convince the future leaders that they really need to be future leaders. And, we took on, I asked the future leaders to take on the Reads Across America program, which just, the competitive piece of it just ended last week. And they took it on and they worked hard, found ways, they creative ways to encourage people to buy Rees, and I'm proud to announce that that we sold more Rees than any other state in the United States. So I'm really proud of that because they really took it on and showed leadership, and they do that in many different ways. And I actually, if you look at the article that was in Transport Topics when I first started, my primary objective was to strengthen the Future Leaders Program, and so I'm proud of that as well. And but once again, it's one of those things that's never done. You never get finished with that. You always have to be looking for new people and fostering the relationships of those who are already here.
Yeah, and as I remember working with you in those early days, and as I was thinking about this conversation today, I look at you mentioned the demographics of the board. Those people that were among the founding members, they're all leaders. They're all leaders or presidents, CEOs, partners of the companies that they were a part of. It's so exciting. That's just so uplifting.
Yeah, it is. And you just can't say it. I mean, just the change that I've seen over my career, and it's, I've been around for a while, as we've already discussed, but the change that I've seen and anyone who has been around for a long time, you realize that it gets harder to keep up. And the longer you're around, the harder it is to keep up. And because the change is so significant and the young, youthful minds that are coming on board are are the ones that are deeply invested and are the most well educated, whether it be technologically or just in general, and they're just so important. We just can't do it without them, and we just have to continue to push that.
And along those lines, that's not just, we're talking about people that are running trucking companies and being part of the, different various solutions to help some of the industry's challenges, but drivers too, right? That's an issue that we have as an industry, getting younger drivers when the minimum age is 21 years old, but the average age of a new entrant is in the mid to late 30s. That's a problem.
It isn't a new problem. I mean, needing more drivers isn't a new problem, but it seems to continue to escalate as generations change and attitudes and focus on quality of life certainly differently than what I did. In my day, it was like, if I had a good job, you work hard, you save your money, someday you retire and move on. You stay with the same company, you show allegiance. And as you well know, that's nowhere close to today's generation of employees. And so it makes it much more difficult, but it certainly isn't impossible. And I'd say that you're probably you're certainly one of the leaders in recognizing that and looking for ways to attract and retain. As you said, you're sponsoring Clint Pulver, who that's his thing is how do you keep people around? It's not just like a nice office with a window anymore. It takes a lot more than that.
Well, yeah, and it's people, right? We're in such a people business. I know it's trucks, but it's people. You're still dealing with people.
It's always people. it's no matter what, you're not just here, but anything you do. If you don't have the ability to communicate with people in a way that is respectful and that they appreciate and that makes them respect you, you just aren't going to be nearly as successful as if you were able to do that.
Absolutely. And one of the things, I do want to get into the deeper dive question here, but even before that, when I asked you about what are some of the benefits, this particular deeper dive question is actually about the call on Washington. And so sort of to set that up, I think, I've gone at least a dozen times, pretty close to that over the last 20 years or so, where every year we go visit our state, congressmen and women. And it's an amazing experience. It's eye-opening. But the question is, for those who aren't a member of a state association or have never had a chance to attend one of these, the deeper dive question is, how do I get involved with the call on Washington trips? Is it worthwhile to attend? You want to unpack that?
It's probably, it's one of the more important things that we do. It's so valuable. When people from the back home districts go to Washington, D.C. to call on members of Congress from their state, it's so much more meaningful than many of the people that are calling on those members of Congress on a daily basis. Those people who sit in the lobby, the lobbyists, they're hired guns. They're hired they can't vote for the member. They just have to try to have to use those people skills that we just discussed to get in that door and get the attention of the member. But still yet, the bottom line is these are not constituents that they're normally dealing with. When we go there, we do our best to find constituents from each of the districts and each of the members' districts that when we sit down in that office, we can say, this member is in your district. And so it's all about votes, as you well know. And so they know that, and they listen more to those people. So, but it's so valuable because it helps you. It's amazing if you've never been there to see what it takes to run the United States government. I mean, it's a massive, massive operation that and so many moving pieces. And to see the buildings and to see the people and to sit in those offices and talk to those members about the issues that are truly important to the attendees and their companies is just it's unparalleled. And it isn't hard to get involved. You simply need to say, I'm interested in that. And when are you going? And we never turn people away. So, and we occasionally are able to have a dinner with a member of Congress while we're there. And so then when you go there and you meet those people, then when they come home and you go to see them, whether it be at a dinner or just at a meeting, they remember that you came there, and it's a totally different situation than if you've never met them before. So it's very valuable.
Yeah, I can speak from experience. You learn so much about how the government works, and you learn when you always hear the stories of how old, or at least the average age, it seems of some of our legislators or congressmen and women. You realize though that they have really young staff people that seem to be doing a bulk of the work.
Well, I think but my daughter spent about 2 months in D.C. this summer as an intern for a member of Congress, and she's like, I can't believe the responsibilities they gave me. I'm like, so you're running the government, or what's going on here? But you're right, Jeremy. That's a very good point. That the people who, in many cases, are paying the closest attention, because there's no way that an individual member of Congress, on their own, can stay on top of all the issues that they have to be responsible for. They can superficially know what's going on, but when it comes to the deep dive thing, they have to have a staff that does that. And you're right. In many cases, they're just really young people who you walk in and say, these are the people running government. I guess they are. So that's a very good point that you make. And I think another important point about the staff is that they never go away. They may work for a different member of Congress. If their member decides to retire, or their member doesn't get elected, or their member moves on to a different job, the staff people never leave. They're just working for somebody else. So when you go to those offices and you meet those staff people, they're really, in essence, more important for the long term than the individual member of Congress. So that was a very good point.
Yeah, well, and also I feel better knowing that it's in their hands, quite honestly.
Well, I agree with you, especially compared to some of the things that we've seen over the last few years. I think you're right that there's definitely a much more relaxing, refreshing perspective there than what we see in many cases, which are just difficult to deal with sometimes.
Well, before we go, just could you share maybe what advice you might give to any individual who's aspiring to pursue a career in the trucking industry?
Gosh, it's a great industry. Like I said, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the positives. If you really want an industry where you'll get the support you need to be successful, if you're truly interested in the industry, there's so much support here, and it's really important. I mean, as we always say, if we all, 80+%, some states more, 90+% of all the freight that moves into the United States. And so the nation doesn't work without the industry, and anybody who's interested in it, there's so many opportunities beyond truck driving. I mean, the industries, as you well know, with technology, with all the other pieces that are becoming so important in this industry, there are a lot of opportunities that never existed in the past. And I think we've already talked about the contribution that the industry makes to the safety and all the other things that we do. So I would say, if you're truly interested in it, you should look at it seriously, because there's a lot of opportunity.
Tons. And I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gary. I'm grateful for our friendship, and I really appreciate your dedication for, more than half your life to this industry.
Well, I hope it's not more than half, but we'll see. But I really appreciate it, Jeremy. I appreciate what you do. Our relationship for a long, long time, and you're really doing some great things. And we appreciate having you, not only a member of our association, but but just in the industry in general.
That means a lot. I really appreciate it. And thank you for joining me for another episode of Taking the Higher Road and for spreading the word to your industry peers. We really appreciate it. Remember, you can submit any question or comments, including those which may appear on upcoming deeper dive segments at podcast@driverreach.com. And don't forget to rate and review Taking the Higher Road, whatever platform you use to listen. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.